Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. We are back here today as Purdue prepares to head east to take on Syracuse in what really has turned into a pretty big matchup on paper that Purdue really needs to win. On the show today, we will preview the Orange. We will talk about what Purdue needs to do to come away with a win. We will answer a few of your questions and touch a bit on the big news in the Big Ten that came out of Lincoln, Nebraska on Saturday afternoon. Let's waste no time. Let's jump right in. If you don't already, follow the show on Twitter. We're at Boilers Beyond. Always hanging out, always talking ball there. So be sure to come hang out and send questions over to the show there. And make sure you subscribe to the show if you don't already. Boilers and Beyond available wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss anything. As always, with these Wednesday shows, we will go back to the previous game with a few final thoughts that we may have missed on the Sunday recap show, and then move forward to preview the upcoming game. I didn't mention this on Sunday, and I should have. Major credit to Purdue fans. Very good turnout for that game against Indiana State on Saturday. You know, I'm old enough and have been around long enough, and when I say that, I mean longer than the Jeff Brom era, to remember some very sparsely attended games and even some very sparsely attended non-conference games before you knew that the season was, in trouble. And there were certainly plenty of seasons that were in trouble early on in the 8 years prior to Jeff Brom arriving. But Purdue fans showed out incredibly well. It was hot, no doubt about that, especially if you were on the east sideline. It had to get very hot over there. I'm glad I wasn't, but very good turnout. Purdue has had a very good turnout for both its games so far. The Penn State environment was one of the better ones I've seen at Purdue. And Indiana State, for being a FCS opponent on a very hot day, coming off a loss that had people pretty upset, very good turnout. Credit to Purdue fans for that. Thinking back to that Penn State game, I never thought I'd see the day where at Ross-Ade Stadium I was standing for most of the game. That was awesome. I loved that. So credit to Purdue fans. It cleared out early, but the game was over early. People didn't have a whole lot to stay for unless you were, like me, staying to see what freshmen and what deep reserves got into the game. In his Monday press conference, Jeff Brom remained very complimentary of Devin Mockabee, the walk-on running back from Southern Indiana, who got some reps, was the leading rusher against Indiana State. And Brom sounded like that Maccabee's going to be a part of the running back rotation moving forward. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out, because in an offense like Purdue's, I don't know that it's possible to get carries for Doru, for King Doru, for Dylan Downing, for Kobe Lewis, for Devin Mockabee, and for Tyrone Tracy, who Jeff Brom, after week one, was adamant needed to get more touches out of the backfield. So, look, Purdue doesn't run the ball enough to get all of these guys a lot of carries, especially if Doru's your number one guy. It is certainly interesting that, Downing and Mockabee are two of your top four running backs, and both came in and still are walk-ons. Downing is not on scholarship. So that's interesting. Purdue hasn't been helped by running back departures by any means, but someone has to be the odd man out there. We haven't seen a ton from Kobe Lewis. I thought we would see more. Dylan Downing certainly looks better than he did a year ago. His body transformation this offseason has been noted, so that's been very good. Going to be interesting to see how carries shake out at the running back position. In real time on Saturday, It skipped my mind that Samisi Fakasiecki didn't play. He missed the game with an ankle injury. I don't know why that skipped my mind. I guess after him not playing last year, I'm not used to looking for 97 out there. But no Fakasiecki on Saturday. The linebacking group is getting pretty deep into the depth chart. We discussed Jacob Wahlberg and Clyde Washington seeing the field more, partially because Jalen Graham is out. But if Fakasiecki's not in there, and I don't know if you can play him and Kyron Douglas next to each other, but without Fakasiecki in the mix, you're getting some deep cuts into the depth chart, at least of what it looked like to start camp, to make sure that you're getting a full group out there. As a whole, though, we talked about it being a good win. Really no new injuries that came from the game that we know of, and that's always a positive. It's time to move on, and Purdue heads to Syracuse for a noon Eastern kickoff on ESPN2. Only the second time in school history that Purdue will take on the Orange. The first time they played, the 2004 season opener, when Purdue absolutely dominated Syracuse 51-0. That was a rare Sunday. Yes, a Sunday afternoon game in Ross-Ade. Kyle Orton threw all over them. Very dominant win for Purdue. A little bit different is the expectation for Saturday, as Purdue opened up as a 3-point favorite, but money quickly came in on Syracuse. This one is down to a pick'em as of recording on Tuesday evening. Where that closes at, who knows? But it's sitting at a pick'em right now. How important is this game? There are no Big Ten West implications, no. So you can't say that. But do you want to have a chance at a January bowl game? Do you want to, do you have a Purdue over 7.5 wins ticket if you're betting season win totals? If either of those are your expectation, you want to get in that 8-9 win range, this is probably a must win, especially to get 9. You're not only losing once from here on out if you lose on Saturday. So this is not must win in terms of the season, but boy, you really, really want to have this win. This is a big one. This is probably bigger than you would have thought coming into the season. Maybe bigger than you thought when this game was scheduled. A little bit about the Orange. They're not a familiar opponent for Purdue. They aren't a program that most Purdue fans probably pay attention to. Year 7 of the Dino Babers era at Syracuse, and oddly enough, there is a Purdue connection. Dino Babers, an assistant on the Jim Coletto staff in the early 90s at Purdue. It hasn't been all smooth sailing for Babers at Syracuse. He came into a tough spot. Syracuse entered the ACC without being an ACC caliber football program. And that has been the case for a lot of those Big East schools that decided to get serious about football for a while. But nonetheless, they did have a high watermark in 2018, 10-win season. They went to a good bowl game that year. Outside of that, they have not been to a bowl. It is not the easiest place to win at, no question, but they've started to do some things that have made this season look interesting for them. We didn't know what to expect from Syracuse coming in, and conversation about them really varied. I heard some people really down on them, looking at them as, a 3-win type of team. And I heard some people kind of float them in that 6-win conversation. I didn't hear anything higher than that. But when they blew out Louisville 31-7 in week 1, boy, that really opened up some eyes. That was a dominant win against a program that has athletes. And then Purdue fans, you all will remember how bad UConn is. based off of what Purdue did to them up in, well, it's not Stores where they play. It's way out in the middle of nowhere, but Purdue dominated them up on the East Coast last year. Well, Syracuse went to that stadium and breezed past them 48-14 last weekend. So Syracuse is 2-0. Certainly not what was expected coming into this season, and they have a very redesigned and revamped offense to thank for it, and that is courtesy of Robert Anae, the former Virginia offensive coordinator. If those of you who are familiar with more of the national college football landscape, you'll know what Brennan Armstrong, the quarterback at Virginia, did last year. Put up 200, I believe he averaged 200 yards passing and rushing per game. The guy was unbelievable. That's kind of the same concept that he's brought to Syracuse. And so far, again, small sample size, only 2 data points to discuss, but very, very effective at utilizing dual threat quarterback Garrett Schrader. He's a Mississippi State transfer. He is a very strong runner. Through 2 games, and it's similar to Purdue, where counting that game against UConn as a full game is a bit of a stretch because the backups got in a blowout. But through 2 games, 29 rushing attempts already. That's pretty impressive. And he's been very good on the ground, over 100 yards rushing, very effective. And you combine him in that backfield with a rushing attack with probably one of the more underrated players in the nation. That's Syracuse running back Sean Tucker. He's up to 212 yards already on the season. Was just shy of 1,500 yards last year. Second team AP All-American, I believe. He's really good. He is a blue-collar back. He is not, some human joystick type of guy, but he is rock solid. He is blue-collar. He's someone you have to wrap up and drive into the ground. A little arm tackle isn't going to work on him. You have to hit him, and you have to drive him into the ground. So Purdue's got their hands full with that. And the surprise has been how effective Syracuse has been through the air, because Schrader started the majority of last season. They came in with Tommy DeVito as their starter. He's at Illinois now, if that name sounds familiar to you, but he was benched rather quickly. Schrader was up and down, had a mixed bag of a season. They finished okay, got to 5-7, but nothing great. So far this year, though, in the redesigned offense, Schrader's 38 for 48, 5 touchdowns, over 500 yards, no interceptions. That's some wild efficiency. That's very, very good. Now, again, 2 data points. That's all we have. We don't know how good Louisville is. We know UConn is bad. So that much we know. And in that game against Louisville, he absolutely looked good. Louisville also, we don't know what to make of their game from UCF last Friday either. It's still early enough in the season that we're learning things. But Schrader's been incredible so far. He can be quick to tuck it and run at times, just from watching their games and seeing what they do. He has no problem going through his first read, maybe hitting his second read, and then running. He has no problem with that. From a receiving standpoint, Sean Tucker's their leading receiver. Had a big 55-yard touchdown catch against Louisville in the opener that really was key in getting that game out of hand. So they don't have some big dynamic receiver, but they do have a group of receivers that, for the most part, were all on the roster last year. So there's some continuity there. It's an up-tempo offense. It's full of a lot of reads. You'll see plenty of read option with Schrader and Tucker. You will see plenty of concepts that focus on reading the defense. It's a lot to deal with. It really is. It's very spread out. It does a good job of neutralizing a defense that might be more talented. We saw it with Virginia last year, and that all those same concepts are here with Syracuse this year. It's going to be a challenge for Purdue on Saturday. Over on the defensive side of the ball, they do more interesting stuff. They run a 3-3-5 base defense, which you don't see much of in the Big Ten. Michigan tried to do it under Rich Rodriguez. We saw how that went. But it's a base defense that you don't see a ton of because it's designed to neutralize the spread offense. And you don't see a lot of the spread in the Big Ten. Nebraska did a lot of that with Adrian Martinez. Ohio State does some good amount of spread concepts. Maryland and Purdue. Past that, you don't see a ton of spread. And Indiana with Kalen DeBoer did a lot of spread. But for the most part, you don't see much of it in the Big Ten. It's interesting because they do quite a bit of exotic stuff with it. You'll see even man fronts. You'll see them bring down one of the outside linebackers to be a de facto defensive end. You'll see them bring both of them down. So you'll see them come in where they essentially just have one linebacker in the middle, have 5 men up front, and then 5 defensive backs. It's a very, very interesting system. That 5th defensive back, though, is usually a little bit bigger. If they were running that with Purdue's personnel, that would be Jalen Graham. So it's an interesting system. It is, again, it's a good system for a program that doesn't have the most talent in the world to where they can just send 4 on every play, get home, no problem. It's a very good system. It's going to be critical for Purdue to keep the pocket clean for Aiden O'Connell. Syracuse did a nice job of getting pressure against Louisville. Again, we don't think that's a great offensive line. Malik Cunningham is a far different quarterback than Aiden O'Connell, but pressure's pressure. So can Purdue keep the pocket clean? That's going to be critical. Saw it in that game against Louisville when Cunningham didn't tuck it and run and stayed in the pocket and had time. Guys came open. It's not a great secondary by any means. So if O'Connell has time, guys should come open. That's twofold. But again, I like what they do. I think schematically as a whole, this is a Syracuse team that is aware of their realities. And you don't see that all the time in college football. You see a lot of programs try to be things that they're not. That's not what Syracuse is doing. They're doing some different stuff. And so far through 2 games, it's really worked for them. Taking a look at the Purdue injury report like we do for every game. Look, I brought it up after the Penn State game when Brock Thompson went down with what appeared to be an injury. He came back. Jeff Brom pretty much confirmed what my thought was this week in his press conference, that Thompson's going to be a question going into every game. And it's unfortunate. The guy had a remarkable performance in the Music City Bowl. You'd love to see him continue to build on that. But right now, just with this injury status and it sounding like getting him to Saturday every week, that's going to be a challenge. We'll see what things look like with Brock Thompson this year. Samisi Fakasieki, he's going to be questionable with his ankle. I don't know if he'll go or not. We haven't seen Abdur Rahman Yassin yet. That knee injury is still keeping him out. Whether we see him this week or not, I have no idea. No Jalen Graham, no T. Denson. It doesn't sound like Denson's all that close right now. And Jalen Graham, again, to reiterate, if you missed it on Sunday, he's going to miss, from this point, 2 to 3 games. It sounded like before Indiana State, it would be 3 to 4 games with a tibia injury that he suffered against Penn State. So Again, that's Purdue's best defensive player. That's a significant loss. We will see how they overcome that. 3 keys for a Purdue win on Saturday. Number 1, discipline from the get-go. Purdue has to come out very, very disciplined in this game. As I mentioned, Syracuse's offense is very different than what Purdue sees in the Big Ten. You don't see a lot of wide open concepts in the Big Ten. This is going to be very different from that. That requires a lot of discipline. You are going to have a lot of open field tackles to make. That's not an area where Purdue was tremendously strong against the only credible opponent it's played to this point, being Penn State. Purdue in that game, against their only credible opponent to this point, committed 9 penalties. That can't happen. It's the first road game. There will be noise. It's in a dome. I think it's the first game in a dome for Purdue since the 2017 season opener. Unless I'm forgetting something, that season opener against Louisville was the last time Purdue played in a dome. So there will be some noise there. I would think Syracuse will have an all right turnout, being 2-0. Purdue's going to have to come out, be disciplined on defense, keep the proper assignments, and at the same time, on the offensive side, that offensive line has to be strong in their blocking assignments because Syracuse is going to move around their pieces quite a bit on defense. They're going to put different looks at Purdue. They're going to make Purdue's offensive line be rock solid. Number 2, and this is very important. The short passing game is a major component of this offense. Now, the deep game is as well. And we saw what Purdue looks like when they don't have a deep passing game. That was what reality was with Jack Plummer last season. That's why he ultimately got benched in the second half of the 4th game. Aiden O'Connell can throw it deep, and he's willing to, but completing the short passes is critical. Getting open in the short passing game is critical. That's twofold. That's on O'Connell. That's also on the receivers. He's got to be hyper accurate there. Purdue's not going to be a great running team. I don't care what they did against Indiana State. Purdue's going to be lucky to get to 100 yards per game on the ground this year. Because of that, you have to find ways to move the ball without putting the ball in harm's way. And the short passing game is how you do that. Who become your reliable targets, who gets open, all of that's going to be very critical. The timing in the short passing game looked better against Indiana State than it did against Penn State. But again, you weren't going up against a very high level of defensive back either. You have to keep improving in that area. Going to be very important for Purdue to win. And number 3, again, this offense is different. Big plays on defense are going to be important. And I'm not saying Purdue needs to force 4 turnovers or, have 3 strip sacks or, get a pick 6. Be nice to make it 3 games in a row, but, they don't have to be turnovers. But they need to be negative plays. They need to be, a play where on 2nd and 8, instead of allowing them to get 6 yards, you break up a pass or you get pressure that forces an erroneous throw. All of those things are so important because it gets them off script, it gets them out of a rhythm, and that's what Syracuse's offense is predicated upon. Yes, when you have a dual threat quarterback like Schrader, those 3rd and medium, 3rd and long situations are a little bit less daunting because he can take off and go get it. But going back to discipline, it's going to be critical. If you can keep them in those 3rd and medium, 3rd and long situations, and then go be aggressive, go get them in those spots, go see what you can do. Defense is going to be without its best player, but you can still make big plays without him. We saw it last week. Purdue's going to have to do that a time or two to win on Saturday, and I think Purdue will win. I'm going to go 34-31. Purdue gets the win. Probably going to be a high-scoring game. Syracuse's defense has looked decent so far. They were +3 turnovers against Louisville, so that always helps. It's hard to lose games when you're +3 turnovers. Aiden O'Connell's going to have to be really good for Purdue in this one. I said that going into Penn State. He didn't have his best game. Purdue didn't win that one. I feel very similarly in this game. Aiden O'Connell's going to have to be rock solid for Purdue to win this game. You'd love to see another receiver emerge for Purdue. We'll see if that happens. But I'll trust the group of players in this game that has seen winning, that has won games, that has won road games. I'll trust Purdue to get it done here, and it's critical. I can't emphasize enough how much Purdue needs this win. It's a tough game to play. Purdue wants to schedule a difficult non-conference. This game might be a little more difficult than they'd expected, but we'll see if they can get it done on Saturday. A quick programming note before questions. There will not be a post-game podcast on Sunday this week. I will be up in Green Bay to watch the 1-0 Chicago Bears take on the 0-1 Green Bay Packers. I'm not optimistic, but I had to throw the records in there just for the fun of it. Bear down, though. See if the Bears can get it done. Probably not, but I will be up there for the weekend. So no post-game podcast on Sunday. We'll have a big show in the midweek to break down Syracuse and then move forward to Florida Atlantic. A few questions from you all on Twitter, and I'll try to get better at doing these on Wednesdays. Help throw some stuff at the end that you all are thinking, because the season, while it goes by quick, it can be a long season too, and there are always questions to answer about this program. 2 games in, is there a player on defense that will break out for Purdue, especially someone who will be impactful for years to come? Yes, absolutely. I think it's hard because this is a veteran defense. You have a lot of old guys. I mean, Cam Allen, veteran. Corey Trice, veteran. Chris Jefferson. Branson Dean, Lawrence Johnson, Jalen Graham, Kyron Douglas. I mean, a lot of these guys are in their last year of eligibility. How about we go with Sanusi Kane, though? He's a guy who, playing safety. We saw him get a lot more action last week without Jalen Graham. He is going to be that guy that fills in quite a bit right now, because you'll slide Chris Jefferson down to play more of a nickel role, and that's where he played last year. It makes sense. And you'll put Kane back there at safety next to Cam Allen. I like what Kane can do. He flashed in the bowl game last year playing corner, completely out of position, but did a nice job. He's a good athlete on the back end. Still has a good amount of eligibility left, 2 or 3 years. So I'll go with him. And I do think, I've mentioned him a number of times, Nick Carraway at the Leo position. I do suspect as the season goes on, we will see more of him. He is an immense talent. Early indications out of Purdue on him, very, very good. I think we're going to see him more as the season goes on as well. Again, he's a true freshman, so plenty of time for him. On the flip side, is there any player that's been a bit of a letdown so far and can use a good game? I don't think it's fair to call anyone a letdown at this point, because you played a pretty good opponent week 1. For a lot of players struggling in that, that's forgivable. And then last week, the reps were so limited for Purdue's starters and no one really played that poorly against Indiana State. So I think it's hard to really say that at this point. I think this may be a better question to revisit at the end of September. But I do think Payne Durham is due for a big game. I am surprised he only has 4 receptions to this point. Penn State did a really good job zeroing in on him. And then against Indiana State, Charlie Jones was wide open all the time. So so be it. But I don't know that anyone's been a disappointment to this point. I had a question about any freshman or sophomore running backs in the pipeline for Purdue. Yeah, absolutely. Kentrell Marks is on the roster. He's a true freshman. He's someone who, by all means, you think will be a contributor. I think it's tough, though. There is plenty of vitriol about the Purdue running back room out there right now. Look, I get it. Purdue doesn't run the ball well. Purdue hasn't recruited all that well. At the same time, look, Tyreek Murphy came in 2020 as a 4-star recruit. It wasn't into January before he was gone and ended up at Rhode Island. Jaquez Cross came in and saw some action as a true freshman. It sounded like some personal circumstances led to him heading back to Arkansas State. So some of these are unavoidable. That's kind of the nature of college football right now. Yes, there are guys. Devin Maccabee is someone who maybe he's a guy for the future. I don't know. He certainly could be. Dylan Downing could be a guy for the future. But when you look ahead, you're looking at Downing, you're looking at Maccabee. I don't know if Kobe Lewis has another year or not. Not positive there. You're looking at Marks. Purdue will certainly look at the portal again. They haven't had great luck in the portal at running back. But, for right now, we'll just see where things go there. They do have 2 running backs committed in the 2023 class already, Kaywan Brown and Terrell Washington. So they're there. We will see how that progresses, though. And then a question about the freshman quarterback from Lockport, Illinois. Yeah, Hayden Timasek. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Yeah, he's a PWO, 6'7" kid. Look, I don't know what all there is to say. If you look at the Purdue Sports roster online, he's not listed, but based on his Twitter picture, it's a picture of him with a uniform on the sideline against Indiana State. So he's there. He's on the team. Can't say that I know much, though. With walk-ons, yes, it can certainly happen. Aiden O'Connell's proof of that. The running back room is proof of that. But there was chatter about Aiden O'Connell. You heard about him in the camp of 2019. There was plenty of chatter about him being a guy who could contribute or could play if Purdue needed him to. He's done that and more. But until we're hearing some buzz about, a preferred walk-on at quarterback, I can't say that I know much. Double checking to see if there's anything else on Twitter. Yes, I think Payne Durham's going to get more going against Syracuse, with more focus going to be on Charlie Jones. Injury-wise, especially on the offensive and defensive line, that was a good question. Yeah, Purdue's rotated a good amount on the offensive line. Cam Craig, I don't know how healthy he is, but he's out there some. I don't know if he's going to be a every snap guy. He's dealt with back injuries before. We'll see. But past him, you've been pretty good with health in the trenches. So that's always a positive. I did want to close today with a quick thought on Scott Frost. Fired on Sunday, in case you missed it, after 4+ seasons in Lincoln. Situations like this are why, I think Purdue's in really good shape with its football and men's basketball coach, but B, why I am always very hesitant to call for coach firings when things are going pretty well. On paper, Scott Frost was the perfect hire. It didn't work at all. He went something like 16-31, something like that. I don't have it in front of me. It wasn't good. Hiring coaches is a 50-50 proposition for the most part. It can get better. It almost can always get better, but it can almost always get worse. And if you want that 50-50, shown perfectly, after the 2014 or 2015 season, one of the two, Nebraska fired Bo Pelini. I think it was 2014. Look, they fired him for going 9-3 pretty much every year, and they fired him because he was kind of a jackass. What would they give for that to be their reality at this point? You look at Mike Riley. He came in for 3 years and was a flop. You look at Scott Frost. On paper, he was supposed to be great, and he flopped. So, yes, that's why, when you're 2016 Purdue and you've won 9 games in 4 years, yeah, there's really only one way it's going to go. But when you're sitting there in a good spot the way they were with Bo Pelini, sometimes you don't mess with a good thing. This is the same program that fired Frank Solich, saying they wouldn't let Nebraska football slip into mediocrity. Well, they fired Solich in 2004? They've been pretty mediocre ever since. Look, the job isn't what it used to be. It's still a good job. Nebraska as a whole isn't what it used to be. College football is a different sport than it was when Nebraska was dominant. But this is an incredibly passionate fan base that literally has unwavering support. They still fill up that stadium for every game, even when they're not good. They have Big Ten money. They have plenty of private booster money. They're all in on winning. They just don't have all the resources that are natural, that money can't necessarily buy. You're in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's not a natural recruiting base. All the Runzas in the world aren't going to get players to come to Lincoln. So that's why, though. That's why when people come at me and say, oh, Purdue needs to fire Matt Painter, or, Purdue should be okay with Jeff Brom ever leaving, they'll go get someone better. That's why I really have caution. It can always get a lot worse. And a lot of times it's a lot more likely that it gets worse than it is that it gets better. This may be the biggest job open on the market this winter. What will go on there, I don't know. But it is certainly something to circle that I didn't expect happening. I didn't think we would get to this point this early where they would pay double the buyout essentially to get him gone now rather than a few weeks. But here we are. And to quote the great Markel Jones after that game at Nebraska, it was a winnable game. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for spending your time with me. We'll be back midweek next week. We'll recap whatever goes on at the JMA Wireless Dome on Saturday, and we will preview Purdue's homecoming game against Florida Atlantic. Follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, all enjoy the game and enjoy what should be yet another great weekend of college football.